Hey everyone, thanks for watching Natasha's Library. This is Natasha. And in today's video, we'll cover the other functions of an ecosystem that are nutrient cycling and ecological succession. So before continuing this one, please watch previous two videos in my environment and ecology course, okay? So let's start first of all with nutrient cycling and all its types. So just so you know, nutrient cycling is of two types: gaseous cycle, which is a fast process, and sedimentary cycle, which is a very slow process. Gaseous cycle is further divided into three types, namely hydrological, carbon, and nitrogen cycle, whereas sedimentary cycle is of two types, that is sulfur and phosphorus cycle. So the first one is hydrological cycle. So guys, you should know that out of 100%, only 3% is available as fresh water, which is maximum available at ice caps and glaciers, and the least amount of fresh water is available in rivers, that is 0.3% only. So guys, hydrological cycle is all about water cycle that involves the continuous circulation of water in the earth atmospheric system. And of the many processes involved in the water cycle, the most important are evaporation, transpiration, condensation, precipitation, and runoff, as you can see in this diagram. Now we'll study each of the term one by one in detail. So first of all, let us see what is evaporation. Evaporation is the transfer of water from the surface of the earth to the atmosphere. And by evaporation, water in the liquid state is transferred to the gaseous or vapor state. So this transfer occurs when some molecules in a water mass have attained sufficient kinetic energy to eject themselves from the surface water. So the main factors that affect evaporation are temperature, humidity, wind speed, and solar radiation. This is one important thing to remember. So the principal source of water vapor is the oceans, we all know, but evaporation also occurs in soils, snow, and ice. Evaporation from snow and ice is known as sublimation because here the direct conversion is occurring from solid to vapor state. Okay. The next is transpiration. Transpiration is the evaporation of water through stomata. Stomata are the minute or tiny pores available on the leaves of plants. And for all practical purposes, transpiration and evaporation from water, soils, etc. is known as evapotranspiration or total evaporation. The next is water vapor. So water vapor is the primary form of atmospheric moisture. Although its storage in the atmosphere is comparatively small, but it is extremely important in forming the moisture supply for dew, frost, fog, clouds, and precipitation. And practically all water vapor in the atmosphere is confined to the troposphere. Okay. The next is condensation. So condensation is the transition process from the vapor state to the liquid state. It may take place as soon as the air contains more water vapor than it can receive from a free water surface through evaporation at the prevailing temperature. So this condition occurs as the consequence of either cooling or the mixing of air masses of different temperatures. We'll study about these concepts in more detail in our geography part. Okay guys? So by condensation, water vapor in the atmosphere is released to form precipitation. So this precipitation is distributed in four main ways. Some is returned to the atmosphere by evaporation, some may be intercepted by vegetation and then evaporated from the surface of leaves, some percolates into the soil by infiltration, and the remainder flows directly as surface runoff into the sea. And some of the infiltrated precipitation may later percolate into streams as groundwater runoff. So the groundwater is derived from precipitation that has percolated through the soil. Groundwater flow rates compared with those of surface water are very slow and variable. So the last is ice. Ice also has a role to play in the water cycle. Ice and snow on the earth's surface occur in various forms such as frost, sea ice, glacier ice. But when soil moisture freezes, ice also occurs beneath the earth's surface, forming permafrost, which is a typical feature of tundra climates. You know, guys, about 18,000 years ago, glaciers and ice caps covered approximately one-third of the Earth's land surface. But today, about 12% of the land surface remains covered by ice masses. The next one is carbon cycle. So let us understand how this process works. In the stage 1, carbon enters the atmosphere by three processes. Number 1, respiration in organisms, for example, animals breathing. Number 2, combustion, for example, burning of fossil fuels or wood. And number 3, decomposition and decay through microorganisms, respiration. Okay? In the stage 2, carbon dioxide is absorbed by producers in photosynthesis. Plants take in carbon dioxide from the atmosphere in order to produce energy in the form of sugar via photosynthesis using sunlight. In the stage 3, carbon transfer from organism to organism. Okay? Animals eat plants consuming the carbon content, and animals eat other animals transferring carbon from one to another. In the stage 4, animals and plants die. Okay? And the organisms are eaten by decomposers. Decomposers respire to release carbon dioxide back into the air to be absorbed by producers again. Carbon enters the atmosphere through respiration, animals or decomposers, and combustion, fossil fuels or wood. Once it is in the atmosphere, it can be taken up by plants for photosynthesis and becomes part of the food chain. Carbon can then be transferred from plant to animals and animal to animal in a food chain. During this time, some carbon is released in respiration, and the eventual death of the organisms will release further carbon as it is eaten by decomposers and released in their respiration. So, fossil fuels are made out of dead organisms that have been stopped from decaying. Trapping carbon inside and burning them releases the previously trapped carbon into the atmosphere. Okay? So, burning fossil fuels is affecting the levels of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Burning fossil fuels is it was trapped in them, was previously not in the atmosphere, but with their use as fuels, this is being released to increase atmospheric levels. All right, guys. So, this is all about the carbon cycle. Now we can understand the processes of carbon cycle. The natural process occurs through respiration, death and decay of organic matter, volcanic eruptions and natural forest fires. The artificial process occurs through burning of fossil fuels, thermal power plants, wrong agricultural practices, slash and burn agriculture, which is also known as jhum cultivation, deforestation, food processing, urbanization and destruction of wetlands, as wetlands are natural carbon sink. So, guys, being a greenhouse gas and a major reason behind global warming, carbon dioxide needs to be removed from the atmosphere. So, here are some of the solutions to remove carbon dioxide. The first one is green buildings. Green buildings are energy efficient buildings with proper ventilation and green space surrounding the region. The agency GRIHA is behind this work. So GRIHA is acronym for Green Rating for Integrated Habitat Assessment. It's a rating tool that helps people assess the performance of their building against certain nationally acceptable benchmarks. It evaluates the environmental performance of a building holistically over its entire life cycle, thereby providing a definitive standard for what constitutes a green building. Okay? The second solution is carbon sequestration. It can occur by developing areas which act as carbon sink. Do you know, guys, tropical evergreen forests are the largest carbon sink in the world, and therefore they are known as lungs of the world. So, we can do it either by afforestation and reforestation. Afforestation is developing the depleted forests, and reforestation is planting of trees on the roadsides, border, natural parks, farm boundaries, panchayat or public lands, or green garden spaces in cities, which is also known as social farm agro or urban forestry. The third one is restoration of wetlands as wetlands are also natural carbon sink. The fourth solution is iron fertilization. So it means sprinkling or deposition of iron dust on the surface of sea, which results into algal bloom, increase in the rate of photosynthesis and thus decrease in carbon dioxide. But it is in the experimental stage because of the fear of eutrophication. Algal bloom can cause eutrophication. Alright guys, so this experiment is being carried by India and Germany, known as LOHA-FEX. So the fifth one is carbon capture and carbon storage. So an important concept in this is the use of geoengineering technology, which refers to the capture of atmospheric carbon dioxide and its storage deep underground in the depleted oil and gas reservoirs, coal beds, aquifers. So the industrial carbon dioxide is compressed so that it becomes fluid. In this fluid form, carbon dioxide is easy to transport via pipeline and it can be injected deep inside the ground, typically below 1 kilometer, where it can remain stable for millions of years, right? So the important conditions for determining carbon storage are porosity of rocks, permeability of rocks, and absence of faults in the rocks. So therefore the rocks which are used generally are limestone, sandstone and shale. But there is one disadvantage behind this technology, that it can induce seismic activities. The sixth one is biocar burial. So it's a process of burying the biomass, bio-waste in the landfills and thus copying the natural process of creating fossil fuels. You know guys, biocharcoal is created from biomass waste and it's a bioenergy which is artificially created. It's a concept of synthetic gas. Okay. So the seventh solution is reducing emissions. How can we reduce emissions? Obviously, by using efficient technologies in industries and capturing carbon dioxide through scrubbers, converters, etc. We can use public transportation system and we can use sources of clean energy, for example, CNG, hydrogen fuel, e-vehicles, solar energy, hydropower, etc. Right? The next one is nitrogen cycle. So first of all, let us understand some of the facts about nitrogen. Nitrogen is the most abundant gas in the atmosphere, that is 78%. So it cannot be used directly and therefore it is a limiting nutrient, that is available in limited quantity. Nitrogen is important because it forms a major constituent of amino acids, proteins, hormones, chlorophyll and vitamins. It needs to be fixed so that it can be utilized by both living ecosystem or natural ecosystem and agricultural ecosystem. So the process of nitrogen fixing, that is converting atmospheric nitrogen to nitrates, is done by nitrogen fixing bacteria, lightning and thunder in limited quantity, and in fertilizer industry. So now let us understand how the atmospheric nitrogen is fixed, which is known as the process of nitrification. In this, nitrogen is converted to ammonia, which can be done in three ways. The first one is bacteria, which is free found living in the soil, for example aerobic bacteria, for example azotobacter and benzymachia, and the anaerobic bacteria, for example clostridium and rhodospirillum. The second one is through symbiotic bacteria, which is found at the root nodules of leguminous plants, for example rhizobium. And the third one is cyanobacteria, which is a symbiotic association with blue-green algae, for example Anabaena, Spirulina and Nostoc. Then the ammonia is converted to nitrites through the bacteria Nitrosomonas, and nitrites is converted into nitrates through the bacteria Nitrococcus and Nitrobacter. So in the nitrogen cycle, after nitrification, the next step is denitrification. Denitrifying bacteria are Pseudomonas and Thiobacillus. Nitrates are converted into ammonia through Pseudomonas and Thiobacillus, and nitrates are converted into nitrogen through urea or uric acid. Alright guys? So this is the diagram of nitrogen cycle. The process of nitrification and denitrification is being explained here. You can see, guys. The next one is phosphorus cycle. So the phosphorus cycle is the process by which phosphorus moves through the lithosphere, hydrosphere and biosphere. Guys, phosphorus is essential for plant and animal growth as well as the health of microbes inhabiting the soil. The main biological function of phosphorus is that it is required for the formation of nucleotides which comprise DNA and RNA molecules. Specifically, the DNA double helix is linked by a phosphate ester bond. Calcium phosphate is also the primary component of mammalian bones and teeth, insect exoskeletons, phospholipid membranes of cells, and is used in a variety of other biological functions. The phosphorus cycle is an extremely slow process as various weather conditions, for example rain and erosion, helps to wash the phosphorus found in rocks into the soil. In the soil, the organic matter, for example plants and fungi, absorb the phosphorus to be used for various biological processes. Now we'll see the steps in phosphorus cycle. So the first step is weathering. Since the main source of phosphorus is found in rocks, the first step of the phosphorus cycle involves the extraction of phosphorus from the rocks by weathering. Weather events such as rain and other sources of erosion results in phosphorus being washed into the soil. Okay, this is all about weathering. The next step is absorption by plants and animals. Once in the soil, plants and fungi and microorganisms are able to absorb phosphorus and grow. In addition, phosphorus can also be washed into the local water systems. Plants can also directly absorb phosphorus from the water and grow. In addition to plants, animals can obtain phosphorus from drinking water and eating plants. The third step is return to the environment via decomposition. So guys, when plants and animals die, decomposition results in the return of phosphorus back to the environment via the water or soil. Plants and animals in these environments can then use this phosphorus and step 2 of the cycle is repeated. You can understand the steps of phosphorus cycle in this diagram more clearly, alright? So guys, this one is important. What are the human impacts on the phosphorus cycle? So humans have had a significant impact on the phosphorus cycle due to a variety of human activities such as the use of fertilizer, the distribution of food products and artificial eutrophication. So fertilizers containing phosphorus add to the phosphorus levels in the soil and are particularly detrimental when such products are washed into the local aquatic ecosystems. When phosphorus is added to waters at a rate typically achieved by natural processes, it is referred to as natural eutrophication. A natural supply of phosphorus over time provides nutrients to the water and serves to increase the productivity of that particular ecosystem. However, when foods are shipped from farms to cities, the substantial level of phosphorus that is drained into the water system is called artificial or anthropogenic eutrophication. When levels of phosphorus are too high, the overabundance of plant nutrients serves to drive the excessive growth of algae. However, these algae die or form algae blooms, which are toxic to the plants and animals in the ecosystem. Thus, human activities serve to harm aquatic ecosystem whenever excess amounts of phosphorus are leached into the water. The next one is sulfur cycle. Firstly, let us see some of the facts about sulfur. So sulfur is one of the most abundant elements on the earth. It is a yellow, brittle, tasteless, odorless non-metal. Sulfur is present in all kinds of proteins. Plants directly absorb sulfur, containing amino acids such as methionine, cysteine, and cysteine. Sulfur is released into the atmosphere by the burning of fossil fuels, volcanic activities, and decomposition of organic molecules. On land, sulfur is stored in underground rocks and minerals. It is released by precipitation, weathering of rocks, and geothermal vents. Alright guys? So this is the process of sulfur cycle. First of all, the sulfur is released by the weathering of rocks. Then sulfur comes in contact with air and is converted into sulfates. Sulfates are taken by plants and microbes and are converted into organic form. The organic form of sulfur is then consumed by the animals through their food, and thus sulfur moves in the food chain. When the animals die, some of the sulfur is released by decomposition while some enters into the tissue of microbes. There are several natural sources such as volcanic eruptions, evaporation of water, breakdown of organic matter in swamps that release sulfur directly into the atmosphere. This sulfur falls on Earth with rainfall. So this is the diagram of sulfur cycle where you can relate with the steps of sulfur cycle we discussed earlier, right? Okay guys, so the last function of the ecosystem that we are going to discuss in this video is ecological succession. So ecological succession is the process by which the life has progressed or changed over the period of time. So when life evolved on Earth, the first species which occupied a given area were known as pioneer community. This was the community of bacteria, fungus and lichens. Lichens are the symbiotic association of algae and fungus and moss. Okay, so over the period of time, this pioneer community got stabilized and progressively changed to establish a stable, complex, multicellular community which is known as the climax community. So got the difference between primary community and climax community? Okay. Sorry, pioneer community. So there are two types of ecological successions. First, primary and secondary succession. So the primary succession occurs in bare or unoccupied surfaces, and secondary succession occurs due to complete or partial destruction of original communities. It is much faster than primary succession. Okay, so second one is autogenic and allogenic succession. Autogenic succession is the succession which is brought out by the communities living in an area by themselves. Okay, and the allogenic succession is the succession brought out by outside forces such as flood and drought. So let us understand this through diagram. When life evolved on Earth, the area occupied by lichens, mosses, grasses and weeds was known as pioneer community. So over a period of time, this changed into cereal community, or we can say that it is a transition phase where the area was occupied by mixed herbaceous plants, shrubs or young forests. Okay. After that, due to stabilization, climax community came into being. Okay, where mature forest, white oak and hickory and climax forests occupied the area. Okay guys, so this is all about ecological succession. So guys, this is it for today. We'll meet in the next video, and before going anywhere else, please don't forget to like, subscribe and share. Thank you everyone.